Hello everyone, it's Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and today we're looking at another standard deck. This is Trevenant BREAK. It's a real big winner from the last week of States, and it's been hailed as a great deck to beat Night March. So it's another one of these that I want to have a look at. We've looked at it in the expanded format. This is more of a standard build, of course. So we'll talk about the deck and some changes in it. As you can see, some interesting counts of things in here. Not the most standard Trevenant I think you've ever seen. There's some things that I want to discuss and why I've built the deck this way. So first of all, we will look at the Pokemon. Very simple. For Phantump, with the Ascension attack is by far the one, clearly the option that we're going to use. Ascension allows us to search the deck for a Trevenant and evolve into Trevenant, which is clearly very good. So if we are going second, we need to hit either an Energy or a Dimension Valley and have Phantump in the active position in order to use this attack. So very easy to do. So we pretty much guarantee Trevenant if we're going second. It's not guaranteed turn one, but again, we have as many outs as possible to try and get the turn one Trevenant via Wally if we are going first. So it's all about Trevenant. He's like the only attacker we use. We don't use Shaymin ever. So 110 HP is fine-ish. Forest Curse is of course an amazing ability. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent can't play any item cards from his or her hand. So highly disruptive, turn one item lock can beat out just about anything. So we want to establish this ASAP and really shut down the opponent's setup. Notably, a weakness to Dark is pretty awkward. Yveltal is a difficult matchup for us, not unwinnable, but definitely we do struggle against that deck more than against most. A resistance to fighting, less and less common right now that we're seeing many fighting decks pop up, but we have a hilariously good matchup against anything fighting. Even like stuff like Garchomp, stuff like Gallade, these are going to be very useless because they can't get into these stage 2s, or they can't maxi because under item lock it's very difficult to get a maxi's hidden ball trick going. So Trevenant will be laughing at these sorts of things, even without the resistance probably, but the resistance is another little addition. And then we have Trevenant BREAK, so rotate your heads 45 degrees I guess. Silent Fear puts 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. A very, very good attack. Turns out the first time we tried to build this, we tried it with Dusknoir, thinking this was really the only way we could get value from Silent Fear. But it turns out, because Trevenant stalls so nicely, we actually have plenty of turns to use Silent Fear and get full value. Especially under item lock, people are really struggling to set up, so plenty of time for us to get value from these. Really good for setting up on Shaymin EXs, amazing for Night March of course. This instantly kills Joltix without fighting Fury Belt and essentially 2 hits Phantumps. Bear in mind this is placing counters, so something like Mr. Mime does not get around it. Where is Mr. Mime? There he is. He would not stop the damage from Silent Fear, so it's not like people can just throw in one tech card and be safe against Trevenant. Silent Fear is placing counters, so we do get around it. Very, very good attack, and it's what we're going to try and spam. It's for a Psychic and Colorless, so that's 1 energy attachment plus Dimension Valley in the ideal situations, so very simple stuff. We're just trying to spam Trevenants basically, and normally this is very similar to something like Vespiquen Vileplume, where we try and do a lot turn 1, really set up a powerful board state and hope that we can win fast game 1s because of our disruption. So normally we're trying to deal with the whole board at once in a small number of turns rather than draw out a long game. We are playing 3 Shaymin EX, very important to get the turn 1 Wally. So having Shaymin in hand and Ultra Ball outs into Shaymin means that we can draw cards without using our supporter turn 1, so that eventually when we do find Wally, we need to dig for the Wally. So we can't use a supporter to draw cards, it needs to be Shaymin basically. I guess unknown, but we don't want to waste slots. The list is super tight. You can see I've made cuts, like stuff like 2 VSCK, you're probably cringing right now, but we've had to make cuts for certain things. But I think 3 Shaymin EX is a must, even though the more Shaymin you play, the less likely you are to start Phantump. I think it's important enough to have a high Shaymin count, because whenever I've prized a Shaymin at only 2 Shaymin EX, I feel like there's punishes around that could really hurt you for not having both Shaymins, and these are going to be the things that people target when they go for Lysandres to get out of ability lock, so that's something to be aware of. You do have to be careful with your Shaymin benching. It's a win condition that you give your opponent by having this many Shaymin EX, but of course you don't have to bench all of them. It's just having the option to whenever you need to is important. So 3 Shaymin I think is the correct number. On to these items now, and where do we really start? There's a few weird counts of things. First of all, we'll just say Super Rod. We need Super Rod because the Rod gets back our Pokemon. We're relying fully on Trevor, and if it does go to a longer game, we need to recover pieces. If we've had to have painful Sycamores, or if we're up against a deck that gets rid of a lot of energy, Super Rod is going to be helpful in these sorts of situations. Right, let's look at some of these 2-ofs. Level Ball is a 2-of that I really like in here. We need to get plenty of Phantumps turn 1. Sometimes it's not enough to just get a Trevenant out. Sometimes there will be situations where if you can Wally turn 1 and have 0 bench, it's actually the safest board state for you to be in, because your opponent can't Lysandre around you. It then becomes only Hex Maniac that can be the out. And bear in mind, if someone's using Hex, they can't use Shaymin, so they can only play the items that's in their hand that turn to draw cards or get into other resources. So we way prefer people using Hex to Lysandre, so sometimes you have to try and not bench anything, but it's often not the case, and sometimes it's safer just to get backup Phantumps if you know that they can threaten the Trevenant. So bear these things in mind. In general, you just want to have access to Phantump, especially if you've started Shaymin. You want to hit Phantump and Wally into it and retreat out of Shaymin by paying retreat. Sometimes even just starting Shaymin, finding Phantump, retreating, and D-Valley into Ascension can be a play, so very important to hit the Phantumps turn 1, of course. Then we are playing 3 Acro Bike. Acro Bike's a card you don't always see in Trevenant. I really like it because we are going whole hog to get the turn 1 Wally. 3 Acro Bike is the highest count I think we really need. 4 is sort of digging into too much. If I went to 4, it probably would mean that I either cut a Sycamore, which sounds really ugly, or cut a Dimension Valley, which there's a real powerful reason why I'm at 4 right now. So I think it's important to have a lot of Acro Bikes, but 3 is the number I've settled on, to give us more card draw. It's kind of painful that we have to discard cards in the process, but oftentimes getting the Wally is the be-all and end-all of this deck. So hit Wally turn 1, Acro Bike helps us do that. 2 red card. This is a very interesting and important card in the deck. You may notice that we're not playing any Headringers, and people are probably saying, well, now you can lose to Shaymin Loop. But I've gone for red card as our approach around Shaymin Loop. Basically, for those of you who don't know, against Trevenant, a frequent strategy is that people will keep Sky Returning. Going into a Shaymin, we do damage, they Sky Return back, send up another Shaymin, keep Sky Return looping, and they're going to try and make us get rid of all of our deck. You know, they're going to mill us out, basically. Because they have no other means around Trevenant, or at least they'll do the Shaymin loop while they wait for the right combination of cards in their hand to deal with the board state, as in look for Hex, look for Lysandre, stuff like this. And normally Headringer would be one way around Shaymin EX loop. Slap the Headringer on Shaymin, now they can't Sky Return, we take a two free prizes. Well, here we're using red card. And the reason why we use red card, it's a less permanent solution. Like the Headringer guarantees you 2 prizes unless they have Xerosic in hand. Whereas red card, they can draw back into a Shaymin, they can draw back into DCE. And if they do those things, we haven't stopped the Shaymin loop. We're still in a bit of a situation here. But red card can pay off and be that sort of way out of Shaymin loop, because we're making them shuffle back their hand, getting rid of the DCE that they've just had to pick up and the Shaymin. So hopefully they don't redraw those combination of cards. But the slots... So basically the red card fills the 2 slots that would be for Headringer. But what red card gives you in addition to what Headringer does give you is a way around some of these more difficult matchups. Greninja can be seen as a really good matchup and a really bad matchup. Going first, I think it's always fairly favourable for Trevenant. But going second, it can be awkward because people can set up their hand to where they can already play down their dive balls, Professor's Letters, Trainer's Mail, stuff like this, to get into their Frogadier and Energy. Basically, Greninja needs just these two things against us, and then they get their board state. And once they get into that board state with Rough Seas, it's going to be very difficult for us to overcome their deck. So what we're going to do is red card them. Goodbye Frogadier, goodbye Water Energy, and just hope that they don't redraw those things. So against that matchup, we have an out on the first turn and going second as well, because this, very similar to Vespiquen Vileplume, loves going first. If you win the coin flip, your matchups go up by probably 30% in terms of win ratio at least. So going second, we want to have red card in here to rebalance the scales. If people of VSC could back a Lysandre after using a Battle Compressor or something like this, you know that they've prepared their hand. They've played down as many items as they can, and then they're probably just sat holding supporters if they're a decent player, you know, so that they can deal with the Trevenant. They can Lysandre around you, they can Hex around you, whatever. Here, red card gives them the random factor once again. They draw back into item cards, they draw back into, you know, the combo that they set up in their hand on turn one is now gone, and it's gone back down to chance if they can draw into good stuff. And if we're item locking as well, it's going to be way harder for them to get out of the lock. So very, very good stuff. Red card offers a lot in here, specifically for matchups such as Greninja, such as Warlord. Warlord can easily beat Trevenant if it's given its own hand and given enough turns to draw cards. But you can pretty much sweep the game under the rug from them by just using Tree Slam like 4 or 5 times, whilst you've used a couple of red cards to stop them getting into AZ, or at least stop them getting into a basic Pokemon and AZ, something like that. Also Rough Seas as well is of course a problem, but we do max out the Dimension Valley count. That's again for the Greninja matchup, for the Mega Manectric matchup, for the Warlord matchup. Basically anything with Rough Seas. Most of these Rough Seas styles decks are playing at least 2, more likely 3 Rough Seas, so we need to have the 4 count to win the Stadium War. Because otherwise Trevenant probably will lose because its output is not the strongest, so we do need to again stop them getting the healing that can really trouble us. So we need to have as many Dimension Valley as possible, and the red card is another way to help us beat those decks because they don't get into Rough Seas as much, and for Greninja specifically, they don't get into the nice combo pieces. And then for the more general board state and metagame, they don't get into as many cards just in general. Especially going first, it's good against anything, just like Vespiquen Vileplume. It really does help you win in 1 to 2 turns rather than 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, you know, late game, which we don't like hitting. We're way happier just being an early game deck. So red card, amazing card for that. I think it's worth taking the risk for Shaymin Loop over than just having Headringers, because red card provides so much more than Headringer overall. Right, on to more standard stuff. For male, we want to hit Wally, and anything else once we have hit Wally. For Ultra Ball, getting us into Shaymin, draw cards, hit Wally. 2 VS Seeker. Now, looking at our supporters, we do have some one-offs, some techie supporters. So you may think we want to have a higher VS Seeker count. But looking at the metagame right now, Trevenant's a big deck. So obviously in mirror matches, VS Seeker's pretty dead. Against Toad, VS Seeker, pretty dead. Against Vespiquen Vileplume, it's pretty dead. So in 3 big matchups out of maybe, these are probably 3 of the top maybe 7 decks, I guess. 6 or 7 decks, so you're expecting to play a lot of Trainer Lock. So VS Seeker immediately becomes a lot less good. Secondly, like I was saying earlier, we want to be a deck that wins in a short number of turns. This is how Trevenant gets the majority of its wins. In the first, let's say 5 turns, I guess. I'd probably say around 70-ish% you're winning games in the first 5 turns. Let's just say that. Unless they start getting into their Shaymin loop, it can get into a longer game until you hit your red cards and try and mix it up. Until that point in the game, you can win in 5 turns most of the time if you're going to win. Otherwise, you're likely going to lose. So we don't need VS Seeker for that many things, to be honest. Really, we just want to hit Wally turn 1. That's why we max it at 4. Obviously in Expanded you don't need this to be a 4 count because we have Xerosic EX, unfortunately not in Standard, so just the 4 Wally, just have the highest odds of starting it and getting it from stuff like Trainer's Mail, drawing into it from Shaymin, very simple stuff. 4 Sycamore, most powerful draw card we have, gets us into pretty much everything else once we have used Wally. And then the one-offs. So Lysandre's important. It's a good mirror match card that actually gets us into items, although items aren't too big in the mirror as long as you can actually get into your Trevors, but it's something to be aware of. And in general, we're trying to stall things out. We're trying to, because we're doing a lot of sniping, we can manipulate the board where we can take multiple prizes, even with stuff like Tree Slam, the attack of the regular Trevenant, which does 60 and 220 snipes. This can be a very viable attack once we have been doing quite a few Silent Fears to get multiple prizes in different ways, so Lysandre can be helpful there. Just a really nice card. Again, it's a stalling option against something like Yveltal, where they're using maybe Oblivion Wing Yveltal. We don't really like that in the active position, so we'd much rather target something else and have some free attacks, basically, where we're not getting hit back each turn. Lysandre can be a nice option for that. And even stuff like Hooper, if we're up against, mainly Mega decks play Hooper, we can hit for weakness with Tree Slam, so that can really help the overall damage output we're getting on the board, so Lysandre can be useful for that. We have a one of Xerosic. Xerosic is very handy for getting rid of stuff like fighting Fury Belt on high HP things, which can be awkward, but even stuff like Night March, we want to speed up the process in which we beat Night Marchers, so Xerosic can get rid of fighting Fury Belts there. Get rid of other things as well, just a very good card. Gets rid of special energy, so again, it's another denial card. You can see combining it with the 2-team Flare Grunts. We're trying to allow our original Trevenant break, basically. We want him to get the most value out of anything else, because it's way better to have one Trev break doing all the work than having to set up a bunch of different Trev breaks turn after turn, because we don't have the strongest draw engine, because we've had to make compromises by having stuff like 4 Wally in the deck. So we'd much rather sit pretty with one Trevenant than have to search out loads. So that's why the Xerosic and the 2 Flare Grunt are in here, to do those very things. Also, such high counts of these supporter disruption cards will help us out in those trainer locked matchups that I was mentioning. Vespiquen, Vileplume and Seismitoad, they very, very much are reliant on double colourless energy, and especially Vespiquen Vileplume, which rarely ever plays Lysandre. Sometimes it will play one. Even if they do play one Lysandre, sometimes by using Acro Bikes, Ultra Balls, whatever else, they might have had to go through their Lysandre before they can get value from it. So in those matchups, the 3 Flare Grunt and the 1 Xerosic can sometimes just win you the game because they're out of DCE, or they're down to their last one and then we can take the last prize, etc. Or they have to rely on Sky Return again. It's an option that they have to resort to. So these sorts of cards really good in trainer lock mirror matches, but also really good against stuff like Yveltal, where we don't want them attacking us back, really. So we'll just stop them doing that for a turn and hope that because of the item lock, they just have a dead hand. So these cards are really, really helpful for the deck. From there, we have 4 Dimension Valley. I mentioned earlier, we need to bounce Rough Seas. Super important to bounce Rough Seas, so we want to max this card out. It means that we're limited to one, or we only need 1 attachment on our Trevenant to use the Breaks attack. We only need 2 attachments to use the Tree Slam attack on the regular Trevor. Very helpful, very efficient for setting up multiple Trevenants, which we will try to do. Additionally, we want to have Ascension, and if we are going second leading Shaymin, the only way we can retreat in this deck, we're playing no float stones, the only way to retreat is via energy. So we need to pay retreat on a Shaymin, and then we need D-Valley so that we can Ascension. This means that we don't have to spend a Wally going second, which means we can use other supporter cards. So we do have the option to steal Wally turn 2. I mean, going second. It's our turn 1, but it's the second turn of the overall game. But Ascension's the best way to do it. It's the most efficient way to get into Trevenant. So maxing out the D-Valley count means that we're happy to spend an energy to move away the Shaymin EX. So that's why we play a full 4 count. Finally, just the 3 Bursting Balloon. I think 3 will get you there most of the time, to be honest. Consider cutting this down to 2. I'm quite happy with 3 right now, to be honest. Again, so many item lock matchups, they're just dead cards in many situations, so you don't really have to have too much of a headache over it. It's going to really help you out against Yveltal though. This is the biggest matchup where it's going to swing the game. Even if they choose not to attack for a turn, they elect not to attack, it gives you an extra turn of Silent Fear, gives you an extra Tree Slam, so either way you think about it, it's extra damage that you get to use by having Burst Balloon. If they choose to attack into the Burst Balloon to try and race you, they've got a lot of damage on their face and you can deal with the Yveltals early, which is really helpful. It's going to really help out against Night March as well. This is another matchup where it really causes headache for them, and probably the thing that swings it really into our favour. It's already quite favourable with item lock and stuff like that, but going second, the Burst Balloon is the thing that pulls us back straight into this game, because even if they are killing Trevenants turn after turn, just having the Burst Balloon means that we're probably taking a prize back each time, and under item lock it's very difficult for them to keep getting DCEs back. Again, we are mainly non-EX, we're not fully non-EX because they can target Shaymin sometimes, but not allowing them to use stuff like Puzzle of Time with the item lock means that it's hard for them to dig for all these DCEs, especially under item lock in general, so it's going to be really nice for us having these Burst Balloons against Yveltal and Night March. These are the biggest matchups at least. Finally, 9 Psychic. I've just gone for Psychics. There's no real need for Mystery Energy. I've seen Mystery in some Trevenant decks, definitely in Expanded it makes sense because you're playing Wobbuffet, but in this deck specifically, because we're playing no Floatstone, we want to have energy that we can always attach to Shaymin to move it turn 1, so that's super important. Secondly, why no DCE? DCE is an option that could be in this deck because it means we can Tree Slam a bit cheaper and we can Sky Return. Oops, I tried to press Tree Slam. So DCE is an option for the deck. The reason why I've not gone for double colourless is because people are playing Xerosic, people are playing Xerosic, people are playing Giratina even can be sometimes an issue, and you really need to have like one attachment per turn is quite slow. We have no acceleration in the deck, so I really don't like getting punished for using special energy, so I think the safest route is just having Psychic Energy, to be honest. There's no real punish for playing 1 to 2 DC, and in fact it does open the door to Sky Return. Just Sky Return into a fresh Trevor, that can actually help you out against Night March, so it's a consideration. I don't think I'd ever play more than 2 double colourless energy, because then it eats into the consistency of getting Silent Fears and Tree Slams off, so do bear that in mind, but it is certainly an option for you. Let's talk about some other options. I've gone over Headringer. If you're not convinced by the red card, or if you want to play a split of red card and Headringer, that could be an option for you. Again, super important to stop the Shaymin loop. Some other supporters you might think about, Teammates. That's one that I really did enjoy in the Expanded build. But in Expanded, you have like Battle Compressor and you have Jirachi. These things can get into these cheeky one-offs. I don't really feel like we have the hand or the draw engine to get into Teammates after turn 1, and turn 1 our focus is just Wally anyway, so I don't think we'll get much value out of Teammates, to be honest. Another couple of options, AZ and Cassius. AZ and Cassius will both serve good purposes in here to move Shaymin, be it if we led Shaymin and we need to move it out the active, AZ and Cassius can do that for us. Also just getting the prizes off the board once we've had the value, that can also help us out, so that could be an option we go down. Personally, I've not gone for it because we're so focused on just the early turns, and you win the early turns, you win the game, so I'd rather just have a higher Acro Bike, higher mail, higher Wally count, so that's my only argument. I can happily see them being put into the deck, but it would eat into these consistency eat into these consistency cards while I take a swig of water. Similar to AZ and Cassius, you could play Floatstone quite happily as well. It could be an option for you that you go for. Just simple, does the same thing as those other 2 things, but it's not VS secretable, I guess, and you can't use it against item lock. Finally for Pokemon, Wobbuffet. Why is Wobbuffet not in here? It's pretty much an auto-include in Expanded. This is so that you can get around Archeops. Although we do still play a high Wally count, it can also help out against the Archeops build. Psychic Assault is a very good attack, especially when you're spreading around with Tree Slam and Silent Fear. I just never feel like it's worth getting out of Item Lock, to be honest. Ability Lock is disruptive in its own right, but I think Item Lock is superior overall, so don't want to play Wob just because it's a bad starter for us, and if we are ever attacking with Psychic Assault, if it's not winning us the game on that turn, it will punish us because it allows our opponent to use, you know, a third of their deck all over again. So that's the list, basically. It's pretty wacky compared to other Trevor builds. I think the biggest decision was the red card. I think everything else is fairly standard, but the red card's a big decision where I'm not playing Headringer. And I think this is probably the way going forward that it's going to win you more matchups than it'll lose you matchups. And that's important to me, I think. So I'm very happy with the red card inclusion. So yeah, let's jump into some games now. Hopefully we don't have people concede to us, but even when we do win games, we win fairly quick. So we might be able to get 1 or 2 games in here just because Trevor wins fast. So biggest issues for Trevenant is Yveltal. That's probably the biggest issue. Other than that, we're fairly happy against anything. These Rough Seas styles decks, like Straight Toad and Greninja, they can be awkward, but I still find myself fairly favoured against those things with the introduction of red card and such a high count of D-Valley. So let's try and load up a game here. PTCGO is a lot slower than it has been in the past. I don't know if there's just more code or whatever been put into the game. But yeah, it always takes a bit of a while. Now that we've got started, we will casually lose a coin flip, which is not good for the Trevenant deck. But we'll see if we can get back into the game here. We also lead Shaymin, which is equally awkward. So, like I was saying, we need to hit... Well, we have the Ball Search for Phantump, we have the Energy, but we haven't got D-Valley in play. So, that's something to bear in mind. We are up against Yveltal as well. I don't know if it's a straight Yveltal deck. I did see quite a few different types in the opening slide, so this could be like a Vespiquen build that utilizes Yveltal. And if that is the case, they're most likely playing between 4 and 5 basic Dark Energy. Way easier for us to deal with than a straight Yveltal deck, which probably plays 6 to 7 basic Dark. Because, oh wow, we got rid of a Yveltal early. That's really good for us. Oh wow, we got rid of 2 early. Oh, so good for us. Oh, okay, so he plays Zoroark. Zoroark is a big issue for this deck. Even if we're not benching a lot of stuff, due to weakness, and because he can foul play and steal Tree Slam, even if we're in our own break, it can be awkward. So we'll see how we can play around this. Our opponent's got quite a few things on the bench early, quite a few low HP things, which I'm quite happy to see. We see a Giovanni Scheme for 1 card, allowing him to find another Zorua. And, oh, okay, so we actually hit Phantump. So these Ultra Balls can be used now for a Shaymin EX. First, though, let's go for a Trainer's Mail, see if we can hit D-Valley. We just hit another Acro. Actually, we can take Sycamore here. Yeah, we can take Sycamore. So next we use the Acro Bike. No, we don't. We use the Ultra Ball first for Shaymin. Yeah. Trevenant's always being discarded. So we still have 1 Shaymin in the deck. We have 3 Phantump, 3 Trevor, and 2 Break. Oh, all 3 Break. Okay. So we will attach our energy for the turn. We will play the Acro Bike now. Wally can go. No, Wally can sit. Wally can stay. It's way safer. It means we don't have to hit the D-Valley this turn. Shaymin can get us some cards. We'll go for the Trainer's Mail. Red card's an interesting one. We'll take red card. He's only got 4 cards in hand though. Red card might be one that I just take and hold. let's think about our long game here. We're retreating into this. This is becoming a Trevenant. We get hit for 60. We attach Evolve. We get the break. I think I need to set up another Phantump. But I won't use it this turn because I need everything in the hand. So we'll just do this and we'll Wally for turn. So 60, then we can Silent Fear next turn if we hit D-Valley, and we can Ultra Ball for another Phantump, which means that we get hit again. We can then go into a new Trevor. Okay, seems fine. Zoroark is going to make things awkward, especially if he has double colourless. That will accelerate the rate at which we lose this game. So he does have Sycamore, and we really don't want to see double colourless energy here. It's the biggest fear for us, because then we're back into a Shaymin, and that's super awkward. So this is also a very difficult matchup for us. Just an Oblivion Wing, that's really good. Really good for us that he didn't hit double colourless. So we do indeed hit D-Valley. It means I can't search for the Phantump though. Unless I risk getting into a second D-Valley and just burning the Ultra Ball. It's our third Ultra Ball though. Because it's our third Ultra Ball, so we have three Phantumps left, 2 Level Ball, 1 more Ultra Ball in the deck compared to the amount of D-Valley we have. So it's safer to go D-Valley. Yep, okay. Mental maths. Watch me miss Phantump. No, we got it, we're fine. We also hit the D-Valley, incidentally, but hey. I think we actually take the VS Seeker here. And we will Silent Fear. Start threatening. It's very nice to threaten this Zorua for sure. So again, he needs to hit double colourless energy to actually get the knockout this turn. And let's see if he's able to do so. If he is able to do so, we have the Flare Grunt, which I might go for on the double colourless energy, depending on how much he plays out of his hand. Just a manual attachment of a Dark Energy and a Judge. Interesting. Definitely an interesting turn. So we've survived. We've actually drawn into a great hand here. And he didn't get another Zoroark. Very good turn of events for us, for sure. And we hit Burst Balloon. I think even that's a big card at this point. So we will use Wally. So we put him to 60. Then to 120. So with the Bursting Balloon attack, it's going to be very awkward for him. It's even awkward for this Zoroark if it doesn't break. So Burst Balloon is really helpful at this point. Draw into a lot of good stuff. They judged and passed, so again I'm going to hold the red card. What do I want to Acro Bike for? Probably just energy, so we will go for the Acro. We hit an energy. It means that next turn we're setting up the Silent Fear potential. And we will indeed go for Silent Fear. And take our first prize. We've stabilised very nicely in this game because he missed double colourless turn 2. But one of the key features of a deck like this with so many basic Pokemon is, or just so many Pokemon in general, that they have a lot of dead cards in the deck. So, if we go Trev, we're getting killed. But I think we still need to. because then we respond with the burst balloon. So we're going to play out our hand and use Sycamore here, because we want to just hit Trev Break to get the knockouts. There's no need to Lysandre, no need to Flare Grunt. We're happy to lose a stadium. They're not playing more than one, I don't imagine, so we do hit a Trev Break. This is good. We also hit an energy, which is very good. Can bench this Phantump. Don't think it hurts too much. We'll hold for now and just play the Rod, because these are actually pretty good top decks now to get back into our Trev or energy. We have VS Seeker for Wally, or potentially Sycamore. We're going up to 14 cards, so 13 cards, so Sycamore will be fine next turn. Silent Fear will take one more prize for two prizes, sorry, for us this turn. We have the bursting balloon to deal with the Zoroark if he wants to deal with us, so that's also very good. Down to 3 prizes. We're threatening game next turn if he doesn't use the Shaymin EX, but it looks like that's what he's going for. This is one way to get around bursting balloon, of course. But even if he does that, I can still Silent Fear kill the Zoroark, so I'm not too concerned. There's a basic energy to Zoroark. Oh, he might be doing... okay, he just scoops. So he saw that he could stand in, take a knockout, then we take one back, and then all we needed to do is Wally and attach to win the game, to kill their Shaymin. So even against a difficult matchup, we were able to take it out of the bag. Let's have one more. That was definitely a close matchup because of those Zoroarks. I think that turn 2 whiff from them lost them the game. We could easily have lost that. But Trevenant doing Trevenant things, stopping them playing a bunch of their cards, is pretty good for us. It probably prevented stuff like Ultra Ball for more Shaymin, digging, stuff like that. Even though that sort of deck doesn't play many items themselves. And bear in mind we went second as well, so had we gone first, they wouldn't have had nearly as good of a setup. Always have to bear these things in mind, but going second, we still were able to win against a matchup that has things to deal with Trevor. So that's a good sign. Because that's a deck that on paper would like its chances against Trev. With like, it looked like he had a 3-3 Zoroark line. So, oh wow, look at this. Phantump Wally. We're happy. No energy though, but we do have Shaymin. Instant Wally. D-Valley is fine. He only needs 3, so if he has Sycamore with a lot of Night Marches in hand, we could get punished here. But that's the only way he can punish us. We'd love to hit a Bursting Balloon or Energy here. And Energy's really good. It puts pressure on him for next turn. So he needs like exactly Sycamore 3 Night Marches plus DC in hand. Or from the Sycamore get DCE. And we just see a scoop. So sometimes it can be that easy to win with Trevenant. If they don't have a very specific hand, we can win in just as much a turn. And that's pretty much why Trevor's good. So basically, yeah, we won against Night March in a turn because Trevenant can do that. And against Vespiquen, Zoro, Yveltal, probably some other stuff in there, who knows, we were able to take out the win as well, even though we went second and they had a lot of dark type things in there which could have dealt with Trevor. It's a pretty fragile deck that basically does ask your opponent the question. If they have the answers, they can easily grind you down and win. But if they don't, Trevor will pull out all the stops and just get there in the end. So, 2 good games, and that's Trevenant for you guys. Go test it. It's been doing well at States recently, and I think it might be a good pick for Nats as well, because it's super consistent at getting out that Trevor. And it's slightly better than Vespiquen Varplume in terms of going second in the game and still pulling back wins, in my own opinion. So, there it is, guys. Hope you all enjoyed. It's been Joe from OmniPoke, and I'll see you guys next time.